Good morning, everyone. I'm Tracy Noah from the Marion Library Service, and welcome to our Library Through the Lens live webinar. I acknowledge that today I am speaking to you from Kaurna land and recognise the Kaurna people as the traditional and continuing custodians of the land. Since the closure of our libraries and venues, we've been working hard to still connect and engage with you through our Library Through the Lens series of adult programs delivered differently. We had to reimagine how to bring you the author talks that you've grown to expect from us, so thank you for joining us today. This morning, we meet special guest author Annie Harvey. A wellbeing educator, Annie works with teams and teams to help prevent burnout and manage compassion fatigue and helps them to maximise their wellbeing and resilience. Annie wrote The Little Book of Still after a request from someone in the audience at her TEDx talk. Please feel free at any time during the presentation to type questions you have for Annie into the Q&A text box on your screen, and I'll ask her these at the end of her talk. Now sit back, grab a cuppa, and please welcome Annie.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Tracy, for giving me such a great welcome. And I wanted to acknowledge how wonderful our libraries are now that they're back open for all of us. I've been volunteering for Glenelg Library in Whole Fives Bay Council for just over 12 years now, taking books to the elderly who are homebound. And in fact, straight after this call today, I'm rushing off to Almondor in Hove to visit James, to take him his Jack Reacher books. He adores Jack Reacher. And I will be his first visitor since the middle of March, since lockdown. So it's going to be a really exciting day. He gets to see Jack Reacher and me for half an hour and have a cuppa. So libraries do wonderful things for the community, and it's really great to be here today. Just to get us all in the mode for my book, I guess, and to get you in the mode for listening and for me in the mode for speaking, I'm going to read one little page from my book, The Little Book of Still. Now, it's actually called Mindful Mobile, but we can do this for any meeting that we have to go into, any Zoom call we have to do right now. Answering the telephone is really where I originally invented this, but we're going to do it together now. So I'm ready to talk and nice and calm, and you're ready to listen, because that means more information is going to be taken in. So it's called Mindful Mobile, a really quick one to be practiced every day. Before answering that call, or before taking a Zoom meeting, simply take 2 deep breaths before answering. You may be surprised by the immediate effect of this little exercise. The person on the other end might even comment how calm you sound. And I put an Annie aid at the end of some of my chapters, and this one says, I always do this one, even I notice the tone of my voice changes on answering. So I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths. If you want to join me, you can. And what I mean by a deep breath is to see if you can elongate your exhalation. So what that's doing is it's switching on the right part of our nervous system. So it's turning off our stress response. So if we've had lots of things go on before 10:30 this morning, then it's a nice way of just settling in for the next hour. So we can breathe in through our nose together. And then slowly out through your mouth, just for a little bit longer. And again. Wonderful. And believe it or not, even when your mobile is ringing, there is time to put in those 2 deep breaths. And I do it pretty much every time before I answer the phone. So I'm going to share some of my stories. I like to tell stories, and that's what libraries are all around. So I'm going to share my screen quite a bit as well. And the first thing I want to do is share a brand new video, and you'll have to bear with me while I just find this video. A brand new video that has been literally arrived in my inbox this morning. And it's quite exciting because I have just recorded my book into audio. And the wonderful Rory from the Pod Booth in town has made this little promo video. So I thought I'd share it with you because I've only looked at it once this morning. Sorry. Let's just make sure we have the audio on. Okay. It's about 45 seconds. It's important that you hear the first word.
Burnout is amongst the world's most prevalent diseases, joining killers like stroke and diabetes. Stress is a fact of life, arguably a price paid for a life lived well. Do you think you're coping well with it? If you're not, join the club. Even the best, brightest, most mentally strong and talented people are sometimes unable to cope. The good news is that we can actively help ourselves to cope with its effects and improve our resiliency. And I have a lot of strategies for you in the little book of Still. So take a moment, pause, be still, and find some calm.
Okay, so hopefully you heard that okay. If you've got any comments about that little promo video around burnout, then feel free to put them in the chat. We'd love to look at those later. And that explains a little bit around what I do. So we know quite a lot about the World Health Organization at the moment. There's something different that they announced last year, in May last year, was this information around burnout. And it is now been recognized as a syndrome by the World Health Organization, resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So what that means, and it's interesting because I'm a little bit of a rebel, you might find out during this talk, is that I understand it's about chronic workplace stress, but we have chronic stress in lots of other areas of our lives, and particularly at the moment, I would say that many of us have, if not now, have been suffering through quite a lot of stress in the last few months. So it's stress that is not successfully managed that can turn into burnout. And as of last year, they said that burnout will be amongst one of the world's most prevalent diseases by this year. So we're already in 2020. Now, what I am passionate around is working with people. I've created a thing called the Still Effect, and I work with people who work with the vulnerable or who live with the vulnerable. So I particularly work with educators, with nurses, with social workers, with aged care workers, with carers of people with dementia, with parents with children with disability. That's just a whole consort of who I'm working with at the moment. And most of my time is spent running workshops or keynotes for those people, in particular around the area of compassion fatigue. And I will send you some links to find out more information about that afterwards, because it's something that people aren't necessarily aware of, but briefly it means burnout for people who care. And I'm sure if we don't recognize that ourselves, we know people who are in that boat. Why is it one of my passions? Well, I have a couple of burnout stories myself, one from what I call the big bad corporate world back in the UK in 1998, and then again as a school teacher in 2010 in Adelaide. So my passion is really to give people as many very simple tools that people can use in their daily life to prevent getting to that burnout stage, or getting to falling in a heap stage where you just can't do anything at all. And I've been there twice, and I really am on a mission to help as many people as possible from not getting to that place. So we'll get back so you can see the full screen again. So one of the tools I use and how my book came around is about putting mindful moments into my day, a bit like that breathing with the mobile phone, but also doing a formal meditation practice each day. And the mindful moments are the things that are in my book. So what we call informal mindfulness, and I'll talk you a little bit around what that is in a second, but I wanted to read another page from my book, The Little Book of Still. On page 7, it is called Put the Kettle On. So this might be, if you haven't put your kettle on today for your cuppa, you might want to practice this later on. A watch kettle never boils, right? We all know the phrase, and it makes perfect sense. You're wasting time. Get on with something more useful until it's boiled. Guilty? But what if something that we think of as time wasting could in fact be useful in its own right? Let's call it the kettle meditation. First, switch the kettle on. Then just stand there watching. because, of course, a watch kettle does, in fact, eventually boil. Take a long, deep breath. Notice what's going on inside your body. Permission granted to let the world turn without you for a few moments. Think of it as a mini break from all the doing in your busy life. It's a hectic world out there, and you deserve a little time off every now and then. Yes, you. In the words of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, think of the kettle as a bell of mindfulness. Feel your feet on the floor and take a long, deep breath. Take another long, deep breath. Then relax and smile as you pour your tea or coffee and move on with your day a little more gently. So a little story on how I came across mindfulness in the first place was from this lovely lady, who is my gorgeous mum. And Mum was diagnosed back in 2013 with, sure some of us can relate, or many of us can probably relate to the hideous disease of Alzheimer's. And this is her in having some respite care with this beautiful lady, if I ever see her again, runs Ridgeway House in Adelaide, and she brought her rabbit in for Mum each day to look after. So in 2013, Mum was diagnosed, and I was taking Mum to the doctors each day, and obviously very stressed, lots of really strong, powerful emotions going on, anger, frustration, grief, all sorts of things. And my mum's GP said, I think you need to look after your stress to be able to look after your mum. Why don't you go and try this thing called mindfulness? I'm not sure really how it works. I don't do it myself, but I hear it can be great. So off I went and downloaded an app and read a couple of books, and really got into the practice of meditation quite quickly. And why the driver for me to continue learning and still practicing today was back then, 7 years ago, what it allowed me to do was to be really present with Mum. And we hear, well, be present, be in the present moment. It allowed me to sit with Mum, hear her story that she repeated 20 times maybe about when she was 9 years old in one conversation. With all those emotions, very human emotions still going around in my body, I was able to ground myself, be present, give her the gift of listening. And also, my dad was in quite denial at the time, and he was very angry about it all and would shout at Mum. So I would, just by me being present with Mum and being calm, used to actually calm him down a little bit and create a lot less conflict in their home. So it was a really important driver right from the beginning when I learned this wonderful skill of mindfulness. And it's why I've dedicated the book to Mum. Right at the beginning, in memory of Mum, your love and laughter lives on in me. So that was 2013. Fast forward 1 year, and my dad decided to take Mum on a little trip, not to Hong Kong, actually back to the UK. And this was against everyone's wishes. Mum was quite advanced with her dementia by this point, and everyone said, you must stay in Glenelg. You must keep her where she knows, where she feels safe. But my dad disagreed with all this and decided to take them on a big trip back to the UK for a month. Now, it's quite strange because normally when I can hear people, I can't hear you today. I can normally hear the sighs in the room when I say that. What happened was he didn't want me to go with them. We kind of fell out quite majorly about this decision of his. And I let him go, took him to Adelaide Airport in June 2014. Went to bed that night, didn't sleep too well. Now had my mindfulness skills, but still wasn't sleeping well. And I got a call in the middle of the night to say, hi, I'm calling from Hong Kong. I've got your mum here. She's a bit confused. Can you speak to her? And I'm thinking, well, I'm sure they're on the flight to London by now. They were going through Hong Kong. So I spoke to Mum and she said, I'm in Adelaide and I don't really know how to get on the tram. Can you come and get me? So alarm bells went off straight away. And this is where I had to use all my breathing skills to have a conversation with Mum and say, put me back on the phone to this nice chap that's been talking to me. And what had happened is en route to the London flight, my dad had a heart attack and a stroke on the escalator. This is where you hear the sigh in the room. fell to the bottom of the escalator. He went off one way in an ambulance, and Mum was taken off with the Qantas attendees to a room in the airport to phone me with nothing in her bag to say that she had dementia. So it was a really, really frightening phone call. I think we can all go through life and say we've had one of these scary phone calls. That was mine. And what I did was I managed through Facebook to find, love it or hate it, I found some people who spoke Mandarin, who lived in Hong Kong, who could get Mum from the airport and take her to a hotel and keep her safe with British tea and biscuits. And so I flew over the next day to find her, track Dad down in one of the many hospitals he'd been taken to. And in that time I was there for, it felt like 12 weeks. It was actually only 12 days. And it's exactly 6 years ago this week that I returned with Dad and a medical team. And he was in the stroke ward in the repat for quite a while. So big deep breath after that, just telling that story, because I need to every time I tell it. But what I'm very grateful for are the skills of mindfulness that I had at the time, but I didn't have any other self-care tools in my kit, I guess. But what I did discover was a thing called laughter yoga. And it sounds really strange to move from that story to laughter yoga, but at the same year I got Mum some respite where she had the rabbit in her arms, and I went over for a couple of days to the Happiness and Its Causes conference in Sydney to see the Dalai Lama speak, and was invited to join a laughter yoga session at lunchtime, which was one of the best experiences in my life, very uplifting. And I said, I'm going to come back to Adelaide and teach people what to do and how to get the skills of laughter into their lives. So I came back and trained, my husband and I trained, and I also, so this was the end of 2015. And I was coming up to my 50th birthday in February 2016. So one day I had finished a laughter yoga session and somebody came up and said, oh, you sound like you like a lot of fun. How about you come and join us and be a Marilyn Monroe and swim around Brighton Jetty to raise money for Cancer Council? And at this point I decided I'm going to say yes to everything in my 50th year. Rightly or wrongly, got me into trouble sometimes, but I decided I wanted to do 50 things in my 50th year. So laughter yoga was the first one, and being Marilyn Monroe out in the ocean, Brighton Jetty, seemed to be an obvious choice for the second one. I like dressing up, I like raising money for charity. Unfortunately, when I got home, you can hear that I'm not from here originally. A slight issue, I realized that I can't actually swim. So what I did, the wonderful library, I went to the library and I looked for a book on how to swim as an adult. I also Googled it. I found a video from a guy in the 1970s teaching kids how to swim underwater with ping pong balls and straws. And I learned that, much to the horror of my neighbours, for about 3 weeks in my garden. And I took my book from the library called Immersion Swimming. I took it to the Minda swimming pool, which has really shallow water. And I taught myself to swim over about 3 months, just taking that book, a chapter from the book every single day. And sure enough, on the 4th of February, 2016, this is proof in case you don't believe me. This is me as Marilyn under that wig, and somewhere in the ocean out there, I am probably next to all the life surf guards, swimming, overcoming fear of sharks, and raising that day $100,000 with 99 other Marilyn Monroes. So that kind of started my whole 50 new things in the 50th year. Now, they weren't all as major. I did jump out of an airplane and I did learn to swim, but I had other little things as well. And I was invited to, with the laughter yoga, I was invited to TEDx. So part one of my TEDx story is on the left, where I was given the job of warming up all the volunteers. You can see all the volunteers in their black t-shirts. So my job was to do 10 minutes of laughter yoga with them to make them feel empowered and uplifted and energized to open the doors to these 1,000 people that were going to come into the town hall that day. And I absolutely loved it. And I had a peek. I was allowed to sit and listen for the whole day, but I had a peek before everyone came in, and I saw that famous red dot on the stage and thought, wouldn't it be fun to do laughter yoga on that stage next year? And didn't think too much of it, other than a year later, because I was now on the mailing list because I'd attended the event. It said, if you would like to put forward your idea for a talk, the deadline is midnight, whenever it was next week. So I wrote in the application, I bet I can get Adelaide Town Hall, 1,000 people to meditate and laugh out loud in 3 minutes, and pressed enter, and literally did a laugh as I pressed enter and thought nothing more of it. And then about 3 weeks later, I got a call to say that I had a spot on that famous red dot at TEDx. And I said, fantastic, thank you. So TEDx talks are normally about 12 minutes. I said, so have I got 10 or 12 minutes? And they said, you have 3 minutes. That's what you asked for. Right, okay. So I went prepared to do my 3 minutes, and I was called the pattern interrupt that day. There's a little bit more about it in my book, but I came after a very triggering talk straight after lunch. So I was the pattern interrupt in people's emotions to just do something completely different. And because they enjoyed my practices so much, they luckily gave me 6 minutes. So I know that Tracy will send the link, if you haven't seen it already, to the TEDx talk. And it is only 6 minutes, in fact, just less than that. And if you need any reason to laugh and you don't think you can, watch it, and it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to laugh with me, along with 1,000 other people. So it was a great experience, and I created the word still, the still effect, from that talk. And as I was leaving that day, this guy came up to me from the audience and said, oh, that was awesome, and I love the still effect, and I'm going to go and teach it to my 4 boys and my wife over supper tonight. But is there a book about it where I can learn more? And I said, no, but there may be soon, because remember, I'm doing 50 new things in my 50th year, and I'm saying yes to everything. So I went home, had a good sleep that night, had a few glasses of champagne that night too, and I got up the next morning and started to Google how to self-publish a book. It had never been on, I didn't have a bucket list, by the way, for these 50 new things. I just said yes to everything. So it had never been on my list to publish a book. I had no idea how to do it. So I decided, with doing a couple of online courses and some research, that I would start with an ebook, start with a Kindle version through Amazon. And within 2.5 weeks of that man asking, is there a book about it? 2.5 weeks later, I had published a book on Kindle. And there is some tricks of the trade. If there's anyone that's here today that's listening, you can certainly speak to me at a later date about tricks of the trade on how to publish an ebook, publish a book on Kindle, but also to get your ratings up. So I am really delighted to say that about 3 weeks after I launched, so this would be Christmas 2017, for just a few hours on one Saturday morning, I was selling more ebooks than Eckhart Tolle. And he's pretty famous in this whole mindfulness, well-being, meditation space. So, but in my book, I probably say that I'm an Amazon bestseller. So don't tell anyone, that's our secret on here today. But for those few hours on a Saturday morning, back at Christmas 2017, I was selling more ebooks than Eckhart Tolle, which I'm really proud to say. So that was my book, and I sold quite a few Kindle, but people said, oh, I don't want the Kindle, I want the real book. I want the book to flick through. So I had to do some more research and found some people to put it into the format that was required. And I now do a thing called print on demand, where I get my books printed in Sydney. So about a year later, the print version was launched. Now, the book is split into 30 mindful moments that you can put in during your day. And why it's popular, I think, is because you can flick through to anything. So you don't have to, a few people said to me, oh, I've started your book, I haven't finished it yet. Well, you can flick to page 63 if you want and just start reading. And it's a good size, and it has some really easy, simple ways. I'm all around teaching simple, practical tools that people can use straight away. It has been really useful for people in the last few months. It's interesting that people have been posting on LinkedIn around it. So a lot of business people have taken it on board and sent it out to their teams when they're feeling a little bit isolated working from home, just to flick through and try one out. What I wanted to say around this book in particular, and how it's helped me and others, I guess, in lockdown in the last few weeks, is what I've been doing in lockdown is meditating a huge amount. I have a really big thing going on with my dad again at the moment. So he, ironically, has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's just last week, and he's been in and out of hospital or in transition care since the 19th of March. So he hasn't been home in lockdown at all. And I haven't been home much because I've been visiting him and sorting things out. But when I have been at home or around Dad, I'm just going to type this off for a second. I have used my mindfulness skills all the time. I'm meditating every day. What this is allowing me to be is to, again, be present with Dad. The same story that it was with Mum, but I have so many more tools in my toolkit now. So I'm using mindful moments all the time. I'm using that deep breathing all the time. In April, I did a Facebook Live. So feel free to go back. They're always going to be on there on my Facebook page around how to cope. But I was really looking at how I was coping each day and just doing 3 or 4 minutes on a Facebook Live. Sometimes I started by reading pages from the book, but in the end, it was just whatever came up for me. So if I saw a mural on the wall in the car park at Ashford Hospital, I would stand in front of that and just talk about what had happened and how I was using my coping skills. So there's 30 videos in April for you to go back and have a look through that. I also then in May shared a book from my page each day on all my different social media sites, and it seemed to help a lot of people. And I'm going to read one because this is how it started. On day 1 in May, I said, well, I'm going to read the one called Soap because we're all washing our hands at the moment. So this one with a beautiful cat under a tap is called Soap, and it's still relevant now, of course. Think about how many times you might wash your hands during the day. Use this as a moment to be present. Turn on the water and hold your hands under the tap until the temperature is just right for you. Listen to the water as it falls across your hands and then down to the sink. Add some soap to your hands and lather gently and mindfully. Feel your fingers moving. Feel the soap on your skin. Take in the smell of the soap before washing the lather away. Dry your hands slowly and carry on with your day. So I fill my day with moments like that. In fact, just this morning, I was eating my toast and I knew, well, I was very aware because I practiced meditation, that I was worrying about my meeting with Dad today constantly. What if he says this? What if they do that? What if this happens? And as soon as I noticed that, I come back to and noticing that I'm eating really quickly and completely mindlessly. So we know what mindlessness is, which is the opposite. We're doing everything on autopilot. So I brought my awareness back to eating my toast, literally the sound of it crunching in my mouth, the taste of it, the smell of it, just for a few seconds. And what that is doing is science wonderfully is now telling us is that that is changing just that, not formal meditation, just doing a few of those moments each day is changing our neural pathways and strengthening the grey matter. And for me, that's my big driver to slow down the aging of my brain. That's another reason why I practice mindfulness and meditation. So in the book, right at the beginning, let's just share this lovely lady, is this lady. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know Jill, but Jill Hicks wrote the foreword to my book. Jill Hicks, Dr. Jill Hicks, AM, MBE. And she very beautifully went up to the pod booth last week and recorded the foreword so that I can publish the audio book. And I came across Jill, actually, we both spoke at a very similar event to raise money for Cancer Council a few years ago. And I, as I quite often do, was doing some laughter yoga on stage for the audience. And Jill, bless her, and if you don't know about Jill, look her up, but many of you will in Adelaide, I think. Jill was there with her 2 prosthetic legs and her big, big smile and her real buzz for life. She's such an inspiration. And every single movement I did, and laughter yoga gets you moving quite a lot. There's no yoga in it, but it's a lot of moving around. She was doing everything that I asked the audience to do, and in absolute hysterics the whole time. So she fell in love with laughter yoga. In fact, she asked me to come along and do it at her 50th birthday last year for 100 people in her back garden. So she's a great friend and a true advocate for resilience and adversity. And she very kindly, as I say, recorded the foreword last week. So please look up. Jill is amazing. She does all sorts of things. Just look her up, Dr. Jill Hicks, if you don't know her. The other thing I did in lockdown was to design an app around the still effect. So mindfulness is one part of my self-care toolkit. And I have designed an app for early learning educators and for, hopefully from tomorrow, for ICU nurses at Flinders Medical Centre, for all the ICU staff, which is really very exciting because if they haven't burnt out yet, many of them will be on a journey, and we know that there'll be lots of nurses around the world that'll be on that journey too. So I'm having a big meeting tomorrow, and hopefully that app is going to be launched to prevent the burnout, to prevent the compassion fatigue, to get people just to wake up a little bit to the fact that we all have choices. We all have all that adversity going on, all that stuff being thrown at us all the time, but we have choices, and we have very, very simple things that we can bring into our daily life that are within us all the time that will help prevent that burnout. And burnout leads to anxiety, leads to depression. So all these little tools, putting them all together can really, really help. And as I said, I would not have got through the last 3 months or so without all these skills. The other thing I did in lockdown, which you'll get a link for, is I recorded 4 videos for SA Health. If you go onto YouTube, Wellbeing SA, there's lots of things on what to do during lockdown, but obviously now post-lockdown as well. And I recorded 2 mindfulness videos for adults, 1 for teenagers and 1 for children. And I'm happy to say that I have a 2-year-old fan. She's called Scarlett, and she asks her daddy to replay this YouTube video about 10 times every day, apparently. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll have to look it up. But if you go to SA Wellbeing SA on YouTube, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see those 4 videos, and they're really great resources. Recorded the audiobook during lockdown, and perhaps as I've now recorded this, each of the 30 chapters, so there's a quote, so there's a favorite quote, for example, let's pick one here. Oh, let's read one from Eckhart Tolle. That would be appropriate, wouldn't it? In today's rush, we all think too much, seek too much, want too much, and forget about the joy of just being. So each of the chapters starts with one of my favorite quotes and then goes into an informal mindfulness activity, and they build up during the book. And then often there's an Annie aid, which is like a little tip from me at the end. So I'm planning that each of those will now be a start of a podcast, which should be the next thing I do whilst in lockdown mode and not traveling around the country speaking. And finally, I wanted to end with 2 things. I wanted to share that I have in lockdown started writing book 2. And book 2 is going to be a novel, but based on a true story. Might have something to do with Hong Kong. So I didn't want to write another, what I call another self-help book as such. I wanted to experiment with writing a novel. So I've written 1 chapter. I think it's going to take a bit longer than 2.5 weeks, this one. But that will be right from 2014 up to now, but in a story novel format. So I'm pretty excited. If anyone out there has given me any tips on how to do that, they would be gratefully received. So the last thing we're going to do before we take some questions is, I'm not going to do laughter yoga with you because it's a bit tricky from when I can't see or hear any of you, but I am going to give you something called a smiling meditation, which is towards the back of the book. And I would love it. You can all join in because nobody can see you. So when you put a smile on your face with your eyes closed, You're only going to feel silly yourself potentially, but no one's going to see you. So let's see if we can all try it together. And the quote, "You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile," by Charlie Chaplin. Smiling meditation. Take a comfortable pose, sitting or lying down. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in slowly through your nose, and then breathe out through your mouth. Just do it a couple of times until you can put your attention and focus into your body. Now I invite you to allow a slight smile to come to your lips. It doesn't have to be big, just until you have the sense that your lips are smiling. Feel how happy your lips feel. Now slowly allow the happy feeling to spread over your face. Bit by bit, allowing the feeling of the smile to spread throughout your body. And just sit with that for a few seconds and notice how you're feeling. There's no right way to feel with this. And remember that you can do this at any time during your day to bring back that feeling. So my little tip, which I've used since writing the book actually, is every morning when I wake up, before I get out of bed and before I go and do my meditation, I'll take 3 of those deep breaths, and then I will put a smile on my face. And it will be those mornings where I wake up and think, oh, I've got to do that today, is really the day when I have to put that big grin on my face, and just notice how it makes my body feel, how it makes my body smile, if that makes sense. So I would love you to try out all those tips. Tracy is going to send you all the links that I've mentioned today, and I'll just take you through. So there's a couple of links there, but you'll be emailed these. So my book is at thestilleffect.com.au. I need to, well, Tracy's there, I need to get it into the library, don't I? There's a conversation to have. And Daily Mind is a 21-day mindfulness meditation course, self-paced, that's online with videos from me. You've got lifetime access to that, and they start with 1 or 2 minutes each day, so really doable. Please follow me on Facebook, because I'm constantly putting tips and tricks on there. YouTube video that I mentioned for Wellbeing SA, and definitely make a point of going and watch that TEDx talk. So thank you so much for being with me this morning, and I would love to hear what questions you might have.
Thanks, Annie. Yeah, so somebody had actually asked about, will you be writing another book soon? So you did answer that, but the second part to that question was, do you have any formal creative writing training?
Oh, good question. No, I don't. So I have an English language and Spanish degree, so I'm quite good at writing in Spanish actually, but no creative writing skills at all. I think I went to one at the Mockingbird Lounge in Glenelg South. I went to one creative writing group, which I loved. It reminds me, actually, I must go and do that again if they start those up. But no skills at all. I do have somebody who might share a house with me who's very good at editing. So I had an excellent editor, which makes a real difference when you're publishing.
Excellent. Do you run workshops in the real world, when we can go back to those kinds of things, I guess, teaching the practices from your book, or laugh yoga classes?
Yeah, so we're not, as a group, we're not allowed to do external laughter yoga at the moment. There are some groups online, which I'm happy to put that link in as well. The formal meditation, so if you want to learn the very, very basics of mindfulness, we hopefully are starting those again in July, 20th of July, I think it is, in Hove, near Brighton, and that's a 4-week course. Again, I will put the link in for there. And then the rest of the other workshops are normally based through businesses, but I'm planning to do a lot more for the public now that I'm on this online mode. So yes, there will be more.
Excellent. Do you have any idea when your app will be available and released to the public?
very good question. When I get my head around how to do all that on iTunes, it's quite complicated to develop an app at a reasonably price without paying people lots of money. So it will be available for ICU nurses from next week as a trial. And once we've piloted and it's all working, then I'm hoping to launch that to the world. So I'm going to say, let's say by Christmas. I've said it publicly now.
Excellent. We look forward to that. So we don't have any other questions at the moment, unless anybody wants to type some in there. Was there anything else you wanted to share with us today, Annie?
Let's see if there's anything else. Oops. Come back to share. No, I'm going to do one more activity from my book, which I missed out, I've just realised. So this is something that we can take into our day. We can take into our day all of these. But this is one of the ones I did for SA Health. So I'm going to invite you all to do this right now, wherever you are sitting, and it's called 5 Things. And I think this is one that would be tailored and given out by a lot of therapists and psychologists will use that. So it's noticing 5 things in your day that usually go unnoticed and unappreciated. So if you look around your room where you are right now, and these could be things that you hear or smell or feel or see or touch. So all these things are about coming back to your senses, about getting out of your head. And that's where all our stress and all our thoughts create more and more stress. If we can get out of our head as many times as possible, like me eating my toast this morning, back into your body using your senses, then you're going to have a much better, calmer day. Not always calmer, but perhaps living with a little bit more ease, I would say. So these could be things that you hear, smell, feel, touch. For example, focus on a particular color. So if you pick a color now, so I'm going to pick red, you could pick yellow or blue, and just look around your environment and see if you can find 5 shades of that color. 2, 3, 4, 5. So what that's done is it's got me out of my head. It's actually impossible to be worrying about something in the future or ruminating about something in the past, whilst bringing your eyes and your ears, whatever it is, to those 5 colors or 5 tastes or 5 smells. Try and spot and really notice where that color appears in your day. Allow yourself to fall awake in the world and fully experience your environment. And I said at the end, it's a great one to do with your children. I've also done a mindful photography week where I've had a color for the week. Wherever I am on my dog walk or out and about, I will stop and take a photograph when I see the color yellow, for example. So I'm being more present and in the moment and awake to whatever is going on in our life, not just all the stressful thoughts and emotions that we have naturally going on. So hopefully those tips have helped you today. We've got a couple more questions there, I think.
No, we haven't. I think people are shy today.
I think they are, aren't they?
They're a bit shy on us. That's a great term that you just mentioned, falling awake in the world. I love it.
Yeah, and it's when I teach the groups, you know, I always remember the first group. I've been doing it for about 4 years in Hove, and the first group, after the first week of this guy meditating for maybe 5 minutes every few days, and I asked the question when they come out, what have you noticed this week? And he said, I have driven past that church on Brighton Road for 10 years, and I did not notice that there was a beautiful mural on the side of it. I've never noticed it because I'm on autopilot, driving to work, worrying about the meeting with my boss, looking to see when the lights are, obviously you've got to be present, looking for traffic lights, etc. But it's waking up to the things that perhaps we don't know are there. They are there, we just don't see them. And it's a bit, you know, if you think about when you watch a sunset and how that makes us feel, we can bring those into our daily life. So I'm working with, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and I'm working with a lady at the moment who's got lots of stress in her life, and her simple act today is to send me a photograph of her cutting the lemon from her tree in her garden and squeezing it and smelling it and drinking her lemon water. That's all she has to think about. I'm not asking her to meditate for half an hour each day. It's just getting used to using those senses again and bringing a little bit of joy back into our lives.
sounds wonderful. We do have a question here, actually, Annie, from Hayden. So he says, can you share some more about your experiences with meditating with young children, please?
Yes, I'm still a registered school teacher, so I do some relief teaching still, but I often get asked to go in and teach school children meditation. And there is an amazing app called Smiling Mind, which Smiling Mind as an organisation are trying to get into all schools. I think by the end of this year, that was the original plan. And I'm all for teaching skills as early as possible, but I am also really passionate about those people that are pressing play on Smiling Mind, i.e. the school teacher or the parent at home, that they have some kind of knowledge. So I like to say, I'll come and teach the kids, but I want to teach the teachers first. Because, you know, for example, I've had lots of training in trauma and how there are certain things that you can teach in meditation and certain things that you should shy away from in teaching the basics of meditation if someone has experienced trauma in early life or whatever it is. So I'm just a little bit cautious. I think there are some, and if you look at the video on the SA Health website, YouTube, you'll see things like I use bubbles. So I use actual, and that's what Scarlett's addicted to is the bubbles. And that's an easy thing to do because you're teaching her to breathe out, exhale longer than the inhalation, which switches off our stress response, rather than saying to the child, take a deep breath. So it's being creative with ways of teaching, definitely skills to be learned as early as possible. And if I could go back and redo my life again, I really do wish I'd had these skills earlier, but that's fine. It's never too late to learn. But yeah, and the other one is in the video is around belly breathing. So when we're stressed or anxious, a lot of our breath is very tight and up in our chest, and we want to get it down to our belly. And as adults, even that sometimes is hard to do. And we'll tell people to say, take a deep breath. Well, we need to teach people what that means. Or even calm down. We tell kids to calm down all the time, but we need to teach them how to do it. So one of the things that's in my book is breathing bears. So if you can lie down, if you've got a child or a grandchild or a student, you can lie down on the floor and each have a soft toy on your belly. And what you do is you just invite the child to just breathe normally, but see if they can rock the toy to sleep. So don't let the toy fall off their belly. So you're not saying breathe in through your tummy, get your breath down into your tummy. You're just asking breathe in your belly so that you can rock the teddy bear or whatever it is to sleep. And then subconsciously what they'll do is they'll get their breath down to their belly so they can rock. Because if you breathe from here, the bear is not going to rock to sleep. So those are a couple of tips, but you can watch how they're done on the videos as well.
That's great, thanks. Just a comment from Liz as well. So she says, thanks for some of the tips you've shared. She thinks they sound easy and simple, and that she uses the box breathing technique and finds that is useful for her.
Excellent, thanks Liz. And I've got the box breathing, well, I've got the 4-7-8 breathing, which is similar, but I have worked with some people, and I in particular, when I was taught that, I used to be so stressed that I wouldn't remember the numbers. So I just say double breath now. So I know that I'm inhaling for 4 and out for 8, or inhaling for 3 and out for 6. So I just double the number for the exhalation rather than remembering 4, 7, 8, whatever it is. So it's really, really good. And lots of psychologists will teach the box breathing. But sometimes if you can't remember, you're going to get more stressed because you can't remember the numbers. Just remember to do double out breath, double breath.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have for questions. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, Annie, and sharing your inspirational book. And I'm sure we can work out how to get that into our libraries.
Good, that'd be lovely. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. So everybody, please keep following the Marion Library's Facebook page, the City of Marion website, and check your inbox to be kept up to date on all of the upcoming Library Through the Lens presentations and workshops. And if you haven't already registered, this Thursday morning, we welcome Alice Bacon from Focus on You. Her practical workshop on building confidence will help you discover how you are limiting yourself and how you can live with confidence and success. So I hope you will join us then. And I will certainly email all of the links that Annie has spoken about today to all of our participants. And thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.